Tēnā tātou te whare, tēnā tātou I whakaraweka mai, I rongi te karango te wā, o tātou nei kai kōrero pāne ki tēnei kaupapa nui nei, aro nei kia tātou I tēnei ahiahi. Nō reira, tuatahi, karakia kia tīmata hia tō tātou wā, nō reira, ko rangi nui e tui honei ko papa tūnuku e takoto ake nei. Ko tāne mahutamā, ko te irātua, ka puta ko tātou, ko te ira tangata, ka tipu ko nā mātua tipuna me o rātou taonga tuku I ho rā ko te reo, me ngā tikanga, me te aroha no hoki e paihiri a tātou I tēnei wā. Kia tūtura whiti whakamaua, kia tīna, haumi e hui e tae ki o ka pai te rongo I te kaho te tīna, I puta mai, te ahiahi nei kua oho, ākoa tēnei wā o te kai o te rānui. He mihi atu ki a koutou, te maha, I tai mai nei, nā kaunuitia nei, me ki tō tātou kaupapa matua, arā ko te awa. Ko te awa tērā I karangahia mai kia tātou I tēnei wā, te o Manawatū, nō reira mihi ake. Mihi kia koutou, o rangitāne, Manawatū, koutou, I tai mai, koutou I whakarohia mai, ki te whakatūngo o tēnei kaupapa, mihi ana, nō reira mihi atu ki te maraohine, takoto mai rā. Ki tēnei tō tātou whare, ko te ara whānui o te ao, te whare pūna kōrero nei, te whare whakaruru hau, ai nā kōrero nei nā kaupapa e rata ana kia tātou e whakakotahi mai tēnei wā. He tika rā, ki te whakaro ake kia rātou, nā mate huhua, ko hinga mai, ko hinga atu. Nō reira kia koutou, me kukohare te ara tāne, ko wheturangi hia, hei kai tiru iho, ki runga kia mātau e hiko I tōna runga te mato te whenua tēnei a te mihi ake. Te mihi ake, nō reira, hare atu rā koutou moi mai, oki mai, koutou ki te pō tātou, ki te ao wairua mauri ora tēnā tātou katoa. Ki o mātau nei, kai kōrero, waha kōrero, kanui te mihi, kia koutou, ia ku ranatira, koutou, kare e kore he nā tātai whakapapa ki konei, ki te rao niwi ngāri, ko nā kuera e kauia nei a koutou, ko Ngāti Kauwhata, ko tāmaki nui ārua, ko kahununu, me o hononga ki konei, ki kora, ki te rohe whānui. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou I arahi nei I nā kaupapa maha. I nā kaupapa maha, tēnā rawa koutou, I whakaro rangatira kia wātea I tēnei wā, ki te kōrero mō te kaupapa o te ahiahi nei. Te titiro kia koutou nei ingoa I pōhe au kua kōrero tātou mō te pāngi o te waipuke ki tō tātou nei rohe whānui. Ki tērā taha, ki tāmaki nui ārua, ki here tauna, ki te marau kauwhata, mihi aroha kia koutou, e kawia nei I e rāhuatanga taimaha, hoi anō, tēnā rā koutou I whakaro nei. Ki tō tātou nei hunga, kua ki rawa nā tūru, I rongi taro ki enei kaupapa, nō reira, kare te whakatoro nā mihi I tēnei wā, māku, te kōrero mō ai tō tātou nei kauni hera, whare puka, nō reira, ko mutu nei, nā kōrero I tēnei wā kia koutou, tēnā koutou, huri noa, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. Mihi ana, tēnā, thank you everybody for you coming along to support our kaupapa. We've got a very impressive Paewai here. In terms of, but, you know, he kaupapa nui, our awa, our collective awa, and we need to get you a better laptop too. But, you know, some of our love for the awa is through our own aroha, our appreciation for the environment, and some of it is through whakapapa. And anei, we tahi o nā whakapapa kaha e hono nei ki te awara, and humbly, we'll get a chance to hear from some of those of our leaders from the wider rohe who have a whakapapa connection, who have memories, who have been brought up in these spaces, and who are, yes, I'm sure in terms of the collective desire to improve the quality of our awa are right there with you all, but there's also there's obligations which they may talk. There's a different bit of obligations, and there's some beauty in it, but e taumaha hoki. Nō reira kāre te toro o ngā mihi. Koutou, e nā pau o nā iwi o te rohe, tēnā koutou katoa, and I'll pass on to you, Dennis, if you might want to kick off our pai or kia koutou.
Do I have to use that? Kia ora tātou.
Oh, yeah. Mo te hopu.
Those of you in the microphone, kia ora. Kia ora tātou. Tēnā koe, te tuakana whakatau i a mātou me oku tuakana ki tēnei whare puka. Mihi atu hoki ki a koe te pāpa, e nohona, tēnā koe. Whakaranga tiri tēnei kōrero a mātou nei. Tautoko ngā mihi katoa ki te rangi, ki te whenua, ki te wai, ki te pō, ki te ao. Nō re tēnā koe. So it's nice to have you all here to have a listen to some of the narrative, historical narrative in a lot of cases, of the river. The Māori word for the river is awa. The word awa, it's Māori language, it's like, I was looking here and listening to Todd and seeing the beauty, these balustrades and the beauty of the design in here. Māori language is like that. It's got these little bits of beauty in it. And one of those is the word for river, awa, which originates from the human body. And that is the aspect before any of us are born. Within our mother, the waters break. And that is the same word we use for the river. The awa, the breaking of water before the birth, it's called the awa when it flows out. So that's the connection our language has to ourselves. So we're all sitting here connected to the river in that way. The waters that broke before we came out into the world of light from our mothers that way. So I'd just like to also acknowledge the speakers who've spoken already this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know if any of you have been there, but we must acknowledge those ones part of this Kaupapa History Week 2023. So I'm still waiting for my presentations getting loaded down, but I'll tell you this, there's a new suburb just out going towards Ashurst. Anyone know the name of that? Tamakuku. Well, that Tamakuku is it's related to the eastern side of the Ruahine Ranges where the Manawatū River originates, up in the Northwood area. Its source comes out of the eastern side of the Ruahine. And before this place was called Manawatū by an ancestor, Haunui and Anaya, he called it Manawatū because his heart stood still. Manawa is the physical heart, and tu means to stand. So when his heart stood still, beauty, he named it Manawatū. But before that, on the other side, we have our ancestor called Tamakuku. And as all the ancestors used to write themselves up a little bit, talk themselves up a bit, and he professed that he was the one who shaped the channel of the Manawatū River and called it Te Awa Pōkere Tamakuku. So my ancestors never knew that, was never called the Manawatū River on the eastern side. It was always called Te Awa Pōkere Tamakuku. I'll get this, oh, here we go. Beautiful, beautiful, thank you. And so we have actually one river with two names. So we have Te Awa Pōkere Tamakuku, which we have to visualise the fact, pre-European, that the eastern side was just totally covered in bush, big tree bush. And this, if you go up to the source of the Manawatū River, it's only about that wide at the start. And it stays that wide for right till you get to the main road, just past Northwood, south of Northwood, and you go over the bridge, and it gets a little bit bigger. So that's the original. And here it is here. That's part of the origin of the Manawatū River. but was called Tawapōkere Tamakuku. Tawapōkere Tamakuku means the dark meandering river of Tamakuku, because it meandered through the thick bush. In that time, it was called the 70-mile bush, 40-mile bush, 90-mile bush, depending where you measured it. So, and that's it there. So that's just, and this is the land where my mother was from. I'm from Waipukuro. My mother was born in Takapo, and born, bred and lived there. So my connection to this river is at its source, Tawapōkere Tamakuku. So I'll always call it that. And I'll come through the gorge and I'll acknowledge Haunui and Anaya. And it was called the Awatapu o Manawatū. So we have two parts to the river. Oh, I was clever. I just moved my foot and it went. So we have a little saying here, and a little proverbial saying, e kore a parawhenua e haere ki te kore a rakohore. And we have two deities or two energies. I like to call them energies. People call them gods. I call them energies. And parawhenua is the energy or the energy or ancestor who was responsible for all water. But before parawhenua being female could move, how does water move? We have rakohore, who is the deity of rock. So in this saying, we have water would never flow if it wasn't for rock. And it also talks about reciprocal relationships, the balance of life, the fact that one depends on the other. So that's what that saying says. The East Side story, here we go. So quick facts. The length, don't. Spoilers. Yeah, because there's a quiz as well, you know. Who knows how long the Manawatū River is? Well, you're in the right place to find out. Go and read these books. What happened there, mate?
This is one on the right-hand side.
That one there? Oh, yeah. So there it is there. So that photo that we just had a look at, that image is up there. Anybody? You want it? 70K. Anyone? Any advance on 70K? A little bit further than 70K. But bit too far. 180 kilometres, the length. Okay, that's so. We know how long it is now. Also, the unique fact about anyone know what makes the river special? Very good. You can go to the top of class. That's right. The Manawatū Gorge is a unique landform because its river flows from one side of a mountain range to the other, rather than from a divide, as do most rivers. So there's only a few rivers, I think there's 3 in the world that do that. One's in India, one's here, and I forget where the other one is. So it's called South America.
There's one in the United States.
Is there? Where's that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. The Gap River forms on one side of the range and travels through the range the other side. So it's called a gap river in scientific, geographical, geology terms. Okay? And the tributaries. Anyone know how many there are? How many other streams and rivers flow into it? No, I don't know. There's so many. But these are the main ones. Manawatū has many tributaries, but the principal tributaries, the main ones, are the Mangatainoka, Tiromia, the Mangahao, the Pongaina, but the real name, this is the actual name of it. Te Paewai is the real name, if you want to know that. So that's easy to say that one too, eh? So the Paewai or Pongaina, and the Oroa, where Dennis's people are based. So there were a little bit of facts. And we all know the story, so I can flick through this one. Okatia or Okatia, some people say. This was a spirit that was found in a tōtara tree on Puketoi Maunga. According to Māori tradition, a great tōtara tree on the slopes of Puketoi mountain range was possessed of a spirit. The tree drove through the mountain barrier of Ruahine and Tararua, creating a gorge in the process. It then followed a path to the sea. And apparently it's the log went right down to Foxton and then they moved down towards Waitarere. So there's Māori have that knowledge of that. And there's also going to be the Ukola putting on a musical based around this areas there. Yeah, bro. Tell them about it, bro.
Well, with the help of this wonderful man and some UCOL students, we've actually created a kids' book, which is going to be...
This is Kane. Kane's name. Yeah.
Everybody. And at the same time, I've composed a orchestral telling of the legend with the help of these wonderful rangatira around. And it's going on in May at the Regent, which I'm still just about to finish writing, but we're getting there. We've got a date.
Go by. So you'll pick up some posters. You'll see some posters around very shortly. So there we go. Fits in perfectly, Kane. So thank you. Good to see you here, brother. Yeah. And so I've already spoken to you about this Manawatū heart standing still, and that's what happened when ancestor Haunui Nanaya is his full name, Nanaya being his mother. After a lot of travelling, Ho looked upon the river with great apprehension, and then his heart stood still when he saw its mighty size and river. Manawatū kia tū te manawa, heart standing still. Okay, so my involvement, or the eastern side of the involvement, really started in 2009 when they set up the Manawatū Leaders River Accord, because the Manawatū River was one of the most polluted in the Western world, 2009. Manawatū River topped the new pollution measurement of 300 rivers and streams across North America, Europe, Australia and New Zealand. Topped the most polluted. And, what are those cows doing there? Might be a little bit of the problem. Oops, there they are again. So part of the nitrogen's leaching and milking and stuff like that. So we've exponentially got into the dairy industry, which has created challenges. Then early 2010, the then chair of the Horizons Regional Council invited key leaders with the interest of the Manawatū River to meet. Now this is quite an interesting aspect. Because everyone thinks the Manawatū River starts on this side, the leader only invited people on this side. Forgot about us on Te Awa Pōkere Tamakuku. So we missed, for a little while, we were out of the picture, then we got involved in the picture. So there's 11 sub-tribes, 11 hapū on the other side. We all joined together and called ourselves te kauru, which is another word for meaning the headwaters of a river. And we came in here. This is us here, te kauru, the Eastern Manawatū River Hapū Collective. There's 11 of us. There's a few of us there, and one of the, we'll talk about where we're standing later on. And it was formed at Mākirikiri Marae 11 hapū, and we signed an agreement with Horizons that time. Then we became involved. So here we go from, and in conjunction with Rangitani o Tamaki Nui Aru, Te Kauri began its projects to assist in this saying, kia hoki te tangata ki tona awa, so people can return to their river. So people can go back to the river, because people were ignoring it. The weeping willow trees or the weed willow trees were blocking people from getting access. So they're starting to make the river more accessible. And that's one of the. September 2012, over 10 years ago, we had these wānanga, we got people together at these marae, 4 marae. And we called it the karanga o te awa, the river is calling us. So we as Māori say, hey, the river's calling us, let's go and meet and let's sort a few things out. So there's a group of us at Rākau Tātui Marae, which is my marae, which is on the Takapo Plains to the left as you hit the plains, just after Norsewood. Rākau Tātui means trees standing apart. And there's a big story about dog being found when the trees are all apart. So they called the person Tara, called that area Rākau Tātui, where he found his dog again. Over here we have Mākirikiri Marae and Danua, beautiful, with its beautiful carvings. And then we had another one in Woodville, Te Ahua Tūranga, Marae and Woodville. And the last one we had here in Pahiatua at the marae called the Kohanga Whakawhaiti. So we had all these wānangas setting up our assistance in helping the regional council, local councils, district councils in how to fix it. And it was based around the word kaitiakitanga, which is looking after protecting, looking after, okay? And that's one thing about nature. Nature looks after itself. The humans, we're having a bit of difficulty with that, looking after ourselves and how we can assist nature to look after itself, because if once we're all gone, the trees and that will still be here. So we talked about these things, our relationship to the river, the family community, the youth, education, what for reasons, teaching and learning science songs with historical reference. Introduced the storyboard project, so we introduced that. 12 boards were placed around the horizon. So this is our eastern side of our ideas coming to the western side. There's 12 of those storyboards around, right around the area. There's some down by the river, there's some over by Paewai, Fielding. So these have been put around, beginning to tell the story of the river. And then we taught the living waters to heal, to initiate, baptise for medicinal purposes. And that's how our ancestors used the water. Okay, for healing, for baptisms in the Māori way, and for medicinal purposes. Oh, now this is a bit long, so I was wondering how I could do this without. I was going to show you, this is the beginning of the river. I got fortunate, my friend was going for his helicopter licence and I trusted him. and he wanted to use the hours, so he took me, so we went the length of the Manawatū River. So this is at the beginning, but I'm trying to, how do I speed that up? Because it goes on a bit. So there, the ruahen is there. Can I do it? No, I can't do it. Can I? Double? Oh, is it double? No. But I wanted to show you a couple of unique features of that area there. There's a beautiful path site there. But we'll have to do that another way. We'll have to do it another way. Okay. I could leave that video. I could get that video to you somehow. Just have a look. But you need to talk about it. Anyway, to 12 or 13, the seed of the project Tū Te Manawa was born. So we just played around with the word Manawatū and took its real meaning and changed it to there. And it came from this idea from Punga Paewai of the Kaitoki marae. And this is just some images here. Hore here, and there's the seed of the idea there, that little house there. Went there one day and says, boy, why can't we have this all the way around so we can learn? This is only to... Punga did this just for his own subtribe, so his descendants could learn about themselves. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be a good idea to get it along the river? So, yeah, from Ngāti Pakapaka. Yeah. And there it is. That's the inspiration of Tū Te Manawa, right there. Punga's vision to help his own people has now blended out to help all of us. So here we go, and we must acknowledge at that time the person looking after the community was Craig Mitchell, a person called Craig Mitchell at Horizons, and it was through him being supportive and helping us out that it became a reality. Called it Tū Te Manawa. The idea was to erect 8 educational kiosks. You see the numbers there, and now I'll turn over to this one here. And this was produced. I'll go back. That's where it started off. Hold on. I'll see if I've got it in here. 4 on the eastern side, 4 on the western side. The kiosk. There we are. There's the first mock-up of it. And then we had, a group of us representing the areas down the river, and we called the Ohu Tū, which means a community group, a volunteer group. The Ohu is a volunteer group, and relating to the idea of standing. And there's a design of that. So we're going to look at now, so I'll go back over here. These were the places that we got done, the 8, with the names in them. So there's 3 focuses. The 3 focuses were on telling the stories, historical narrative, the scientific stories, and community stories. Those are the 3 focuses. And also based around the species that were present at each location. So at the source of the river, up here, number 1, there's a, what's not breeding ground, what do they call it in the river? Spawning. That's twice now you've been to the top of the class. And do you know the name of the species that was there? No. It's the, well, people call it cockabilly or inanga, but they're called, the scientific name is dwarf galaxis. So that's a species, one of the 2 places in New Zealand where they spawn. So those sort of information we learned through doing this whole project. And there's some of the pictures of the species. So I come back here, and the first one we looked at was Fairy Reserve, which is called the Waho Takuri, which is related to the name of Marae, because remember it was bush, the dog got lost, his owner heard it barking, echoing, and so he at the entrance of the gorge by Balance Road Bridge and Fairy Reserve, echoed, and he saw the opening of the gorge as a mouth of a dog. So he called that area that, and that now is, always was, but it's also recognised as the name of Fairy Reserve, the mouth of the dog, or the voice of the dog. So that's where we first went, looked at that, and then we started, that's the beginning of the first build, concrete slab and that, and then the roof on, and then our Professor Bob Yonke helped us out with the design. That's just a wooden one, he just mocked one up to see what it looked like, and that's the owner of the dog there, and there's the dog there, so he's visualised that in there, and there it's completed today. And because of this, the Woodville community got together and fundraised to put up a barbecue area in there. And also there's really beautiful ablutions there now. So it's from that little project to create a really nice place to stay. And if you go through there in the weekends, sometimes the public holidays, it's just packed with RVs, recreational vehicles. It's just hundreds. Yeah, so it's working. That's and there it is there. And that's Bob's made of Corten steel. So Bob was involved in doing a couple of these ones, okay? The project named to generate interest in citizen science and increase appreciation of the river and what it should mean to us and future generations. And that's the beginning of it again. Slightly different, that's, yeah. So we're going through, this is the one up the top, this is number 1, going up here, and we'll just go down the river. It's called Ngā Mokopuna, which means ancestors, grandchildren, 2 grandchildren, and talks about 2 hills behind there. That's one of them. So it's one of the names, one of the grandchildren of an ancestor. Then we go down to Bush Road. This is the Whare at Bush Road. This is in town, down the end of Hokowhitu, yes. Okay. This is at Rangiotu Marae, Rangi Mārie. And this one's at Shannon, Whakatere people. And then we also have this one here, Dennis's, which is where, Dennis? Kitchener Park. Kitchener Park. The other ones, there's another one to be put up at Papangaio, which is, and Whitakino, by the estuary. So then from there, we started going into the activities. This one here, that's not a swearing word. That means, what's it? Stream health and monitoring and assisting kit. And this is just at the back of Rangiotu Marae, where we had hapū members learning how to measure invertebrates and insects in the water. This is a farm at the base, at the source of the river called Tamiro, where we have a beautiful young couple farming, organic farming, and they've become involved in doing a lot of work right here in planting, Tamiro Farm. This is Adrian Cookson from Ag Research, taking children around and teaching them about the river, Ag Research, and here they are, children measuring, educating. This one here is at Fairy Reserve, Te Waho Takuri, and one of our projects was to plant 81 rata trees in memory of the Woodville people who didn't come back from the wars. So that's that hill there as you just drive into Ferry Reserve. And here we go, children again at Te Miro Farm, getting ready to go and plant some. There we are planting, riparian planting. Okay, that's from, here's the present. So we'll just go for a quick one. First of all, we must acknowledge the loss of life down at the Tawa Mate, Awhimate. Yeah, Ahimate. Down at the bottom of Maxwell's line. So we acknowledge that. And here's a recent flood. See the bridge gone? There's the floodgates working overtime. And there's this one here is the new bridge going across to the new motorway. They just managed to save it, I heard. And the place where they're putting the pylons down, because it's about 70 feet, 70 metres that they're putting down, and they just managed to save that for the water going inside. There we go, Herbertville.
I was going to ask you a question. How earthquake safe is the new bridge across the Manawatū?
Good question.
Because there's a major fault through there.
Oh.
The Copper Road Car fault.
One would hope the geologists who were helping in the design of that would have incorporated that knowledge. If you know it, they'll know it.
I would have put it somewhere else.
Hold on. Touch wood. You would have put it somewhere else. Yeah, well, I think it worked out, yeah. So here we see what happens anyway. But at least it didn't go underwater, but shows you how high it went, 70 metres, about that. And here we have the beautiful Tarakotahi Bridge, another part of making the Paewai and the Manawatū River and connecting to the community, get the community back. Ka mutu. Thank you very much. That's my little part to this. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora everyone, Oriana Paewai tōku ingoa. On my mother's side, I'm from Rangitāne, Kaupata Raukawa, and reside in Fielding. On my father's side, we're from Tamaki Nui Arua, and lucky enough to belong to both sides of the awa, actually. So I'm only going to be really brief because Hone has covered a lot, but there's a couple of things I do want to talk about. And at first is just that saying, David Suzuki saying, just to, this is not just about us, this is about everybody. And the belief that we are part of a living entity is everybody's belief, not just us as an Indigenous people. So the Accord, very briefly, we've had 2 action plans, and probably the best thing about the Accord is that it's involved everybody, whether you're a business, whether you're a farmer, whether you are a recreational user, but particularly iwi and hapū. And you heard Hone refer to the fact that initially we weren't all invited in, but we're at the table now, and we've been there for a very long time. We've been instrumental in much of the work that's happened. So I'm going to use a couple of sayings that from Matua Manahi. I actually haven't asked him, but I'm sure he'll be fine. But he talks about us, we are not kaitiaki. Our environment can look after itself. We just need to get out of the way. So when we refer to ourselves as kaitiaki, it's what we might call being a whakahihi, and that's, yeah. And Hone also referred to that. Our environment's quite happy to take care of itself. It's humans that, that muck things up, basically. Matua Manahi also talks about the why is tuakana to the whenua, and I think we've seen in the recent storms that is absolutely true. It's not only showing us how powerful it can be, but what it can do to the land. He also talks about, without water, our land is not going to survive either. So when we talk about tuakana and taina, so when I talk about the why and the whenua, when I'm talking about why, I'm talking about it being the older sibling, and the whenua is the younger one. So in Māoridom, we talk a lot about tuakana taina relationships, that if you are the older sibling, it is your responsibility to take care of your junior siblings. The awa, and Hone also touched on that, is not a single living entity. We're doing some work at present around how we, in terms of mātauranga Māori, about how you might describe that. So if you were to go to the headwaters, it's not going to look the same as it does in Te Awaho or Foxton. And even for those of us that live near to our piece of Wai, it's not the same as our next door neighbours. So when we think about the awa, we probably should stop thinking about it as being the same all the way through, because it isn't. And that's part of the dynamism of being a river system. And if we think about the other side of the ranges there, the river even itself is not the same. When we come through here, we were a lot more braided, we had a lot more going on in terms of where the river actually meandered to. And again, when it floods, you can see some of that coming back as well. So that idea of the water being a living entity, but it has a life of its own, just as all our children are not the same. So we've got to think about those kinds of things, and we're thinking about what is it that we can contribute in terms of taking care of our awa. And our latest example, and this has happened since we went into the Manawatū River Leaders Accord, and people may have had an opportunity to have a look at the Te Awa Tupua settlement, which is in Whanganui, where it's been recognised as a living entity. And I think there's 2 others in the world, one in India and one... There is one other. There's 3 that have been recognised. I think that's the South American one. I'm looking over to my right here. But that's ideally where we would want to be. But in terms of where we are at, that's what we're working towards. And so this last photo here is really just very fuzzy. I've stolen it off someone's Facebook page, and for the life of me, I couldn't get it to download onto the PowerPoint. When we're talking about making mokopuna decisions, that's what we're talking about. This is a photo of one of our teams that entered Te Matatini, Te Ringakaha, who are based in the Tararua. And as you can see there, they have their mokopuna with them, they have their children with them. That's who we make decisions for, not ourselves. And they're at Te Waha o Te Kuri, which is one of the ones that Hone had up there. And that, again, is about their connection to the land and their connection to the water and how important that is. So that photo is really only maybe 3 weeks old. So it's relatively hot off the press. But I really just wanted to emphasise that it's about a mokopuna that we're here for. And this was after their final practice, and they went down to the water to reconnect and to give them strength for their performance, which hopefully people saw over the weekend. But I can tell you that every other group that performed would have been doing a similar thing in terms of strengthening their resolve, tying their whānau closer to them, and recognising the role that the environment plays. So that's really all I have to say, and I'm going to hand to Dennis. Kia ora.
Kia ora mai tātou. Tūtahi mihuri ake taraka pai ki a koe e Todd. Ko koe hei whakatimatanga mo tātou huinga I roto I te karakia. Me koe anō ki a rātou nei kua tai mai I rongi tēnei kōrero taupapa. Kia ora everybody. My name is Dennis Emery from Ngāti Kauwhata. And first of all, in conjunction with Hone and Oriana, to again thank you and acknowledge you for being here. The second part is that I would like to also acknowledge our whānau and our hapū, particularly on the eastern side of the main divide. And thank you, and Hone has given a very, very good dissertation on where we got involved and how we got involved in the Manawatū River Leaders Accord. So one of the things I do want to do is acknowledge our connections that Hone has talked about in terms of how important it is. Oriana has mentioned how important it is for our generations coming up to able to understand. And so we do appreciate you being here today. Look, I'm going to unashamedly talk about one of those tributaries that Hone raised that are connected to the Manawatū, and that's the Orawa. And just like to bring the fraternal greetings of our tuakana rangatira, Tai Hakure, Sir Eddie Jury. Been talking with him latterly, particularly around our way, and his efforts he has been doing around the Resource Management Act and its changes. And so I want to appreciate that. So, look, just quickly for you to add to what has already been added up by our hapū and iwi leaders here this afternoon. So for us as Ngāti Kauwhata, our position is and remains that we want to stop all discharge into the Orawa River, period. It's been a massive problem for us. Whānau, there's been a rāhui, a ban or a prohibition being put on by our tribal elders back in the 1960s. And our request and our desire, Oriana has mentioned about, that we want that rāhui lifted on our watch. We do not want to pass it on to our coming generations. So we are saying to our local councils, saying to our local regional council, saying to the government, we want the rāhui lifted. To do that, we want all discharge into the Orawa River stopped, period. And what don't you understand about that? Secondly, we need to acknowledge that we never ever had extinguished, or we never ever gave up our right to the ownership of the Orawa River, from its headwaters above Apati, all the way down to where it meets and the junction of the Manawatū at Rangiotu. And that is part of our yet to be settled Waitangi Tribunal Treaty claim. So our position. Secondly, just as an example of some of our iwi elders who were involved in a protest back in March 1996, and on the left-hand side of the protest, that's Uncle Duncan Graham. In the glasses at the back, that's Uncle Ned Lawton, Hauturu. To the front in the white shirt, that's Uncle Maina Graham. And the other gentleman with the fuzzy hair, that's my father, Herbert Emery. And this was an incident that happened. We had a farmer build a milking shed, a brand new milking shed called Ken Thurston, right on the river at the Orawa. And what he used to do every day when he washed down was blow all the tūtai and all the things straight into the river, which forced us into having to protest to do that, because where this river ends up is in the Manawatū. Okay, so do that. And so again, as Hone mentioned, there's some foundations to where we're coming from, and those are the three foundation marae that we do that. The one on the left, Kauwhata Marae, that's currently closed at the moment for health, hygiene, and safety problems. That was one of our only marae on this side of the coast, out of 21 that we have a connection with, where floodwaters went through as a result of Cyclone Gabriel. Okay, and just mentioned to Jill, I put her name up in lights. I said I told them about what happened in 2004, Jill. We had to call upon yourself and your team to come and help us. Other marae, Aorangi, where Oriana lives by, that's again had to close because they're doing a massive improvements and renovation and change. So at the moment, both of our two maraes are out. The third one is Iwa Te Kaumā Iwa, 1909. That's over at Awahuri, built in 1893 by our people, by Ngāti Kauwhata, blew down in a storm in 1935. And we are under instruction as tribal members to rebuild Iwa Te Kaumā Iwa at Awahuri. Okay? But that's our connections. And all of this is alongside the Orawa River, all our marae. So just moving on, here's the problem child for us. Okay? And we just had our meeting on Monday with our district council mayor and deputy mayor and CEO and everybody else. It's the discharge out of the Fielding wastewater treatment plant straight into the Orawa River. So when I was a child being brought up at Kowhata Marae, we didn't realise that what was coming down the marae, all the green smell and all that, that was human waste coming from that there, across the road on us. Now that was built by using the Public Works Act to confiscate land off us for the building at that time of what they called a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. And what they've been doing is they've been poisoning us. They've been polluting us all the way, hence the rāhui. Hence the rāhui, and what Hone mentioned about what's the impact that it has further down when we see the flooding. The other one is a meat plant where I even grew up, and I was a union member there. A lot of our people worked there at the AFCO meat plant, but we know we had a massive issue back in 2014 where 20 tanker loads of bile got washed into the Oriana River from out of here. Okay? And we've had to say it has to stop. Okay? And it's connected. All right, so just quickly to go through that, yes, for us, it is subject to our Waitangi Tribunal claim. There is continuing to be pollution and discharge into the river. There is the imposition of the rāhui. There has been the taking of shingle, gravel extractions have been going on and affecting other works as well. There are other discharge points that we're wanting to talk to about, and it includes a lot of our communities. We have set up a two-house model around the establishment of a committee through a declaration that we put through, and we are working on improving the water quality and particularly the downstream effects on our neighbouring communities and iwi, downstream from us. So on a regional basis, there is happening to be and always is some good relationship with our neighbouring hapū and our neighbouring iwi. The regional councils, Department of Conservation, and a lot of our agencies, Massey University. And we are connected with freshwater, recreational, customary and commercial fishery organisation, both private and public. Some of the things that we have been doing to try and alleviate for ourselves is what we call an Indigenous Spark program. And as Hone mentioned, is those kiosks that we talked about. There's some of our young people at Tutoa back in 2017 out up on the river, right up at the headwaters at Apati. And these are our budding scientists, our budding ecologists, our budding environmentalists, right? And we're teaching them, okay? And my cousin Jeff Rakata, who sadly we lost about 6 months ago, passed away. Here's some of our science and innovational work that we're working on. This is biodegradable plastics, your milk bottle tops and all your milk bottles. We've been converting them into a product called soil cells. This is the trial area down behind AFCO meat plant, where we are using these biodegradable soil cells in the black there, and we're putting our native plantings to try and stabilise that stream called otoko. So we're using some science, our mātauranga Māori, and some science to be able to work this through as our way to alleviate the problems that we're having. Here is our area where the kiosks is, the whare mātauranga at Aurori Forest. We have a number of our schools visiting us now, getting the story as Hone talked about, telling the story at home, and our cousin Jeff just waiting to receive a group from, in this particular case it was Colleton School. Yes, so finally the outcome that we're wanting for all of us, and I'm sure you're the same for us, whether it's the Manawatū River or any of our other tributaries that we are dealing with, we are after water quality improvements. We are after opportunities for our people to be able to swim, to be able to eat, to be able to recreate, to be able to spiritualise in all of our waterways. The recent huripare of our cyclones, the impact that it's showing on us today, we stand as Manawatū River being affected. We saw in the slides from Hone about the impact that it has, and we come from a marae that's out at the moment. We can't use it. And sadly this morning I've been told that we've got another tangi at home. Can't take him to our marae, okay, because of this. So that's us again. Just want to acknowledge Oriana and Hone and Todd for just giving us the opportunity just to share some direct impacts that has happened to us. But the main is for ourselves is our Manawatū River, both from the headwaters and all the way out to the estuary at Tauahau at Foxton. Happy to take any call. Kia ora mai tātou.
So are there any questions at this stage? Just we can take a few. Yes, Te Matu.
What is the state of the Manawatū River now compared to when you started?
And just for the purposes of those listening in, so the question is, what is the state of the Manawatū Awa at this moment compared when some of these initiatives we've talked about have unfolded? Hone?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. And I can say that today, and I was out there last week myself, at the headwaters, at the estuary. The word I use is probably it's improved since 2009 when Dr. Roger Young from the Cawthron Institute produced that report. It was a mess, but it's my only word I could say, it's improved, but it's nowhere near what it could be.
Yeah, just in addition to that, definitely an improvement. There's a lot more activities involved in improving the state of the river, especially up in our area with the riparian planting and fencing. There's been hundreds of kilometres of fencing to stop animals going directly into the water, and just the watercress is coming back. There's a scientific measure for you.
Pātai anō? Yes.
I'm just going to ask, and given a time frame into the future, how long would you be talking? 50, 100 years? People want it to happen overnight, don't they? The river, you can start all the rivers. But it's not going to happen overnight.
I think we're looking at a...
Well, I don't think that answer's here. I think we've all got that answer. But from our point of view, from the eastern side and the hapū collective and the work that's being done with the local farmers, now farmers are required in their farm management plan to have a cultural impact statement. And that since then we've had lots of farmers coming seeking assistance to how they interpret that and how they can infuse the knowledge of balance of nature, and as we say, to us, the environment, the river, is, as Oriana mentioned, is a relation. That's our relation. We talk about relationships. Where unfortunately, some of the Western world see it as a product to be utilised and to be exhausted, where we're trying to get back to the balance of staying in balance as our ancestors did. Kia ora.
And so further to us, I've said it before, it's the lifting of the rāhui on our watch. Me personally, I'm well past the use-by date. Okay. But what I want to do is, my tamariki and my mokopuna, that we want to be able to have a celebration and a time to say that we are confident that we are able to lift the rāhui. And it's about us talking to those people that are involved.
Yeah, and we'll take one more question at this stage.
Are there still
Two.
farmers that are polluting, like with the likes of Ken Burster, like you mentioned him? Like, is that still going on? Like you mentioned that you have to have prerequisites now, you have to do repairing and planting, you have to do a cultural report. Is that kind of frank pollutant still going on?
From the eastern side, there was one particular case with these peppercorn leases they have for 20, 30 years, and we ended up in a ridiculous situation where 3 farmers on the eastern side took more water out of the river than the whole of Dannevirke town. It got to that stage. So there's efforts to change that type of arrangement. So, yeah.
And again, on our side, it's fair to say that with us and Federated Farmers, we have been working really, really hard together. I'm picking up from the farming leaders, and I meet with regularly, that there is a desire and a want to be able to improve the water quality And some of them themselves are putting a huge part of their investment into being able to, the riparian planting, the stream fencing, and getting stock out of there. But they will tell you themselves that time to time they don't always get it right, and that's noticeable. One of the things that Federated Farmers did, they came to have a talk with the iwi leaders, and they wanted to know why there's seemingly tensions between iwi and Federated Farmers. However, I said to them that you need to understand that we are farmers too. And so it is in our interest to be able to pick up our waterways and to improve the water quality that's involved.
We also must acknowledge Horizons Regional Council, because now they have subsidies where they 50-50 with riparian planting, so the seedlings, they get those, and 50-50 with the fencing equipment, and also the work they've been doing with working with hapū and what we say mana whenua. We have mana whenua, mana tiriti, so there's a partnership happening, so we have to acknowledge what Horizon is actually doing.
Did have one last question over here. I'm happy that we take that.
The suggestion is that since there's enough on use and you have enough cloud, you need to get rid of trout out of the rivers because they predate on the native fish and the native crayfish.
Yeah.
Over in the Mohawk, I've seen you've seen all the bits of the native crayfish just strewn around. So the only good thing about Giselle, they'll have got rid of a whole lot of trout, which will give them a chance to re-establish themselves. So if you really care about your native fish and your freshwater crayfish, you've got to get the trout out of there. There's no need for trout to be in every river. I know from training, you go around every little stream, little river, it's a trout stream. Does it need to be a trout stream, every one of them?
Well, Hone's got a response. I was going to say that could be our kaupapa for next year's talk in terms of the in-river environment. However, if I
I think that the recreational fishers should be allowed to fish, but like you say, shouldn't be in every stream or every river. So there may be times where, like up in Taupo, it's a trout fishing mecca really, but around here it's not so prevalent. The brown trout not so prevalent, but if there's, like I say, it's a balance. There's got to be a balance. So, but if you say get rid of it, I'm sort of sit on the fence there for me. Kia ora.
Oriana, got any? Oh, tēnā tātou te whānau. Kua hipa te wā, kua ti ai o tātou wānanga i tēnei wā. Engari kare kore he nui tonu nā kōrero ka tai e tātou te whai atu. Nō reira, anō nei pēr he wā. Tē rātou pēr kia hui anō tātou tēnei tira. Nō reira, e akuranga tira, tēnā rā koutou. Hone, Oriana, Dennis, nā mihi, kua whai wā koutou. I nā mahi maha me o iwi kia tai a tinana mai. There's a whakatauki or a saying that goes he pūkinga wai, he pūkinga tangata, he pūkinga kōrero. Where there is flourishing, abundant, living waters, people will be drawn to it for all sorts of reasons. And when we gather in those places, stories will spring, and those stories will be about the relationships between the people and the relationships with those waters. And I think we're very privileged in terms of the sharing today because we can read many of the books here, we can watch things on TV, we can see even these beautiful depictions here, but I'm sure we'd all agree that our speakers here have spoken life into the awa and the connections of iwi, hapū, marae, and its relevance today, not just to them and their people, but to you. And I hope it sparks something in you, and that when you, whether it's in relation to this awa or any other awa, that you realise that all these places are animated, they're alive, they're living, there's mutuality there, and that it's a rongoa, it's a healing, and it's inclusive of everybody. So thank you all. You made my job very easy. I think a bit like Matua Mani Paewai said in relationship to the river can look after itself. My role as custodian over this panel has been easy. I just had to keep out of the way. Mō koutou nei kōrero rangatira. Nō reira kāre te tōroa nā mihi. Ai tēnei wā. We'll close with the usual traditional appreciation. So which haka are we going to do? Just te tautoko? Has anyone got a haka? How about we sing a song? How about we stand up and sing Te Aroha, Hei Mihi, Hei Paki Paki, as a clap, if you like, to our speakers and to our awa and to the kaupapa. Oh, you can do that one too. Nō reira. Kotai. Roha te whakapono me te ami mari e tātou e te aroha te whakapono me te ami mari e tātou e. Nō reira, kia tau mai te Māori, te hi te wehi te wana, te mana o tātou nei tīpuni rungi, nā kaupapa i hora hia nei, ai tēnei ahi, kia tūtura whi te whakamaua, kia tīna. Haumie hui e, taiki e, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you to our kaimahi, thank you for all the supporters, tēnā tātou. Ka pai. Kia ora.